Yo, big 5K. We are teed up, man. I definitely gotta plan something for by the next milestone. Maybe that whole generic Q&A junk that everyone be doing since, I've already been doing this whole YouTube thing for 4 years anyway. But just like I mentioned at the end of the Dark Sonic Part 2, today will be me starting my first Dragon Ball What If story, What If Krillin became Kami, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Starting this non-Sonic story off, Krillin has always been one of my goats. Ever since rewatching Dragon Ball from the very beginning for myself, he's always been very underrated to me, especially with his whole battle IQ, prowess, and being a little bit funny. Being also kinda inspired by Moscow X's Krillin becoming a Saiyan story, even though I didn't really like the ending to that one. I've decided to make my own spin-off on a more involved and realized Krillin without changing my man's genetics. Specifically starting the story after the events of King Piccolo, when Krillin and the rest are brought back after being killed by the villain and his offspring. Krillin, unlike in the original and most Dragon Ball characters in general, would actually reflect on his death. How did it feel? What was that weird bodiless form he was in the other world? How could such a momentous occasion of seeing his best friend almost win his second tournament go downhill so fast? Honestly scaring the monk a little bit and putting him more in deep thought, because as hard as he worked chasing after Goku in the Turtle School, none of the training in his whole life could ever prepare him for every little thing's eventual final boss, death. Out of all the thoughts though that bothered him, it was the slow realization that everything he was feeling couldn't just be the only one, but any other innocent victim that King Piccolo and his evil men slaughtered for their search for the Dragon Balls. What didn't help the situation was since Goku was apparently up training somewhere with the deity of Earth, he could even properly thank him for helping him come back in the first place. This ends up being a topic of discussion that Krillin tries bringing up a couple times during the time script training with Yamcha, Chaozu, Tien, and Korn's Tower. But it hasn't really been the most fruitful, with him only being able to relate to the little vampire as a fellow victim of King Piccolo. Yamcha still hasn't been himself yet, and Tenshinhan is too focused on his own training after feeling like a liability in the last arc. Instead of just following his best friend's example to a T, I believe this timeline presents the great opportunity for Chaozu and Krillin to bond due to their similar experience, finally giving the guys some screen time. For example, our monk has already noticed at this point that Tien being around in general makes the bald vampire think less about the whole dying thing. So after a tiring spar one day, Krillin decides to ask Chaozu more on what his goals actually are for his training, but after responding with the typical to get stronger with Tien, he actually decides to press even further, bringing up that he can also relate to the whole chasing after your best friend thing. Training with Goku back in the Turtle School was one of the best months of his life, but even he can embarrassingly admit that his fighting spirit isn't exactly like the Spiky Warrior. Actually wanting more if he could find a nice girl one day, maybe settle down with a family in the future, and possibly help others by getting rid of some bullies every once in a while. It'll be a nice life in his opinion, but he doubts himself a little bit. This actually brings Chaozu some pause, not only being surprised by Krillin's honest response and, teasing him a little bit about it, but also not really putting much thought on that type of question before. Him and Tien have been together for as long as he could remember under the Crane School, and maybe even before that. And with how strong their bond was, as long as they were together, everything was right to him in the world. But after thinking more deeply about his own death some more, and about the limitations of life, this question actually sticks with the little guy throughout the rest of the time skip. Regardless of these little changes, the 23rd martial arts tournament would still go basically the same. The only difference really is Krillin putting up a slightly better fight against the reincarnated Piccolo with a power level of 235 instead of 220 because of his slightly better motivation, which the good half of the Namekian Kami does notice, being surprised that another apparent human being surpassed his strength but without his training this time. Might be another good fighter to consider later down the road. Goku wins just like usual, rejects the Guardian role, and goes off to marry Chi-Chi, starting the 5-year time skip till Z. Focusing back though with Krillin a few months after the tournament, the intimidating fact that Piccolo Jr. was still around who knows where doing who knows what made him nervous to no end. Yeah, Goku was still stronger than him, but if he somehow inherited that whole making mutated offspring thing, their group could easily be overwhelmed, leading to more people dying if he takes over, making the monk walk back and forth for hours on Kame House. Frankly getting tired of this by now, Master Roshi confronts his always more timid student and reminds him of the Turtle School mantra of eating well, sleeping well, and playing well. And he was doing none of these well with how he's been acting lately. He already been instilled to him the mindset of someone always being stronger than you throughout his training. Spamming his signature technique into the ocean all day wasn't going to help him get there. Knowing the monk's strategic potential, he suggests that he shouldn't be idle in his training then, and should go out and explore the world for all its lessons while seeing if he can get some of that same guidance his rival Goku got. So now, heeding his master's advice and with some encouragement from Korn, who always found the monk amusing, we arrive at the scene of Krillin standing on top of the lookout for the first time. First impressions are everything, Kami already recognizing the monk from before, but is more curious on why he's here in the first place. But after reading his mind, he liked the fact that there was someone else who shared his caution with his evil half that Goku couldn't understand. I believe now would not only be the start of Krillin's relationship to Kami as a student, but as a friend as well. The monk being at a more aimless part of his life and heeding more to the elder Namekian's wisdom compared to Goku, leads to a Krillin that not only slightly leans towards his morality a little bit, but even his job as a guardian, originally only doing the training just to catch up to Goku since he was busy being MIA for some reason. It isn't long before he starts making the connection that being the guardian of Earth was kinda like being the top dog protector of the planet, even though he didn't really like some of the inactivity of the whole job. But if he had the power to do good for others, why not step in? Kami too eventually sees the promise the monk has. While he didn't have the rapid strength growth or adaptability of his previous student, his strategic martial arts mind and pure heart was nothing to scoff at all. While he and Mr. Popo practically forced Goku to read books back in their training, Krillin at least tried to understand the literature, even if he wasn't the brightest tool in the shed himself. The only negative the Guardian's able to know is his timidness and lack of assertiveness, holding him back from growing even further. After much deliberation though, Kami slowly asked the monk over time his thoughts on maybe taking over his position, shocking Krillin, but more unsure than anything. He didn't really think he had it in him to have such responsibility under pressure. The Namekian at least is able to convince him to begrudgingly be an apprentice guardian if he isn't sure yet. Kami, now reflecting on his own inaction of his reign as guardian himself, he retells Hiroshi's advice of exploring the world for himself before making any major decision, him definitely sensing that something from the past was definitely holding the monk back. Now hearing the same thing twice now from two different Nap Masters, just like Goku did back in the past, Krillin would also go and explore around the world, and the goals of learning what did it really mean to protect the Earth, if he even considered this whole thing Kami was talking about. I mean, he was even that strong. Even Goku turned the position down. How much better could he be at it? It's not until revisiting Orin Temple while on his adventure of self-discovery that he sees his answer. Upon seeing the punk after all these years and not seeing his friends around, Krillin's old bullies attempt to get nostalgic and try and remind Krillin of how he used to get treated around here. But that's kinda hard to do when your head is stuck in a couple pillars, all of them being no diffed easily. Were you reminding Krillin that he could have easily been like these guys if he never went to seek Roshi's training. But what I believe hits Krillin the hardest in this visit here is seeing many of the juniors at the temple crowd around him like a superhero, all being glad someone bigger stepped up to the bullies they all shared, and actually making being bald look cool, leading to a scene of Krillin embarrassedly trying to pass on the motto of the Turtle School upon the youth. If only there was someone that stepped up and protected him back then. There were probably a bunch of other people dealing with bullies of all kinds just like he did back then. Maybe this whole guardian thing would let him be that someone, but for the whole planet. Even later in his adventures, having an early reunion with Tien and Chaozu, the shortest of the three, finally deciding his own goal of wanting to open a school of espers or anyone else wanting to learn the ways of the psychic, promoting a better bond between the 3Z fighters after a 2v1 spar. The Cyclops truly seeing for himself the prowess Krillin has gained on his own journey, being glad to finally have a yardstick to measure himself against. Now I think we can pretty much skip to the Kickstarter of Z itself, Raditz arriving on Earth. This time though, after handling the strongest being in the verse, the Scouter actually gives off 3 noticeable power levels this time. The older Saiyajin being curious that there are this many beings close to his little brother's apparent power level. After pressing Piccolo like he does originally, he flies over to Kame House to see for himself. The reunion though had enough surprises already. Besides the attendance of Tien and Chaozu this time around, the squad were more surprised to meet Goku's firstborn, Gohan. On the other hand though, Goku was more excited to see how much his rivals have grown in this time away, especially Krillin. his ki was off the charts since the 23rd tournament. Even noticing the change of his gi, it had to be connected back to Kami somehow. But guys, this is now when Raditz pulls up to the island, ready to question and rescue Kakarot from this boring rock and join the rest of the Saiyans in the Frieza Force. This being where everyone gets the revelation of Goku's genetics and history all in one scary package. Krillin nervously says he's glad he didn't fall off from his training this time, but not really being interested in the ramblings of a lowly human, Raditz goes to slap Krillin with his tail. Surprisingly though, the midget this time doesn't go flying back into Kame House, but actually barely catches the tail of his whole body while taking some damage, using the Saiyan's tail, leading to the invader freezing up as a punch to tri-beam combo pushes Raditz off the island. Floating in air now, Raditz quickly checks on the scouter on the 3 death-wishing warriors ahead of him. It's finally power level time. Everyone's favorite part of Dragon Ball clearly. Goku unweighted is still at his power level of 416. Tien though in this timeline now rocks a power level of 380 with his higher boosted motivation. And lastly, Krillin. Due to spending the whole time skip doing good around the world and training on Kami's lookout back and forth. And guys, remember the fact that the Z fighters always get stronger when they have a goal in mind to go after. Considering Goku and Piccolo were out here rocking mid to late 300s by the end of OG Dragon Ball, I can confidently say that the Krill Dog stands on top as Earth's strongest defender with a power level of 615, way better than his original 205. Knowing now he can't divide and conquer such a cramped place, Raditz actually flees for a better battlefield to fight in. This is when Piccolo finally arrives, sensing all these key levels that are all higher than him. He now attempts to make a deal with Goku on teaming up against the Saiyan, who actually ponders, not wanting to put his best friend at risk of dying a second time, but Krillin gathering his courage and now having an inclination to trust Piccolo even less in this timeline, tells Goku that he was fine with going along. There was no way he was gonna let him go alone, where that whole killing 100 humans thing happened anyways, both flying off in hurry on top of the Nimbus. Piccolo, angered, attempts to kidnap Gohan in revenge, but Tien actually steps forward, ready to throw down with the evil Namekian, while Chaozu holds Gohan in a psychic hold. Switching to the main perspective, the 2v1 between Raditz and the 2 Turtle School students is going way better in this timeline. While they may have a combined power level of around 900, instead of being stuck with Piccolo, Goku and Krillin as best friends and learning under the same masters now with Kami added to the mix, makes the combined effort more like a 1100, resulting in the evil brother actually having to try, as the martial arts and Krillin's short stature all become increasingly annoying as the battle continues. Regardless, Raditz has been used to getting jumped by both teammates and enemies before, so in response he blasts away both heroes with a double Sunday, starting his divide and conquer strategy, breaking the leg of Goku, while then furiously attacking Krillin, still baffled that a bald midget was the strongest on this dirtball of a planet, with full Saiyan pride. Before he can kill the monk though, Goku empowers his feet with Kamehameha energy and boosts forward to Superman punch his brother, barely staggering back the villain from killing him. Krillin, now backing up and taking this chance to plan, tells Goku that he has a technique under his belt that might get them out of this situation, but right now he only had about one in him and he needed to grab his tail just like he did himself earlier. Seeing the strategy, Goku would barely grab onto Raditz's tail after taking a worse beating himself, as Krillin strangely begins to raise one hand in the air, gathering ki for his newly named Destructo Disc. Back on the island though, Tien and Piccolo's match is in full motion. With there only being a small difference between their power levels, it's a true fight between prodigies to see. Young Gohan though, seeing the retired Crane student as some sort of hero, and in combination of being scared of the situation going on and where his dad was in general, begins to power up in anger. Enough to break out Chaozu's psychic hold with a power level of 1300 to find where his father was, comedically grazing Piccolo on his way out of there, leading to his own downfall, as with instinct rocketing straight forward from the island. Shifting back to the duo, Goku grabbing Raditz's tail and Krillin now for fully charged up attack is just about ready to give the signal to dodge away, but Raditz, sensing the doom, plays with his brother's morality, getting to beg for his life. This makes Goku hesitate, starting to drop the tail. As soon as he is about to let go though, both warriors can sense an incoming sonic boom approaching their location. "Is that Gohan?" says Krillin, like a crash out, the taller now with a lower power level of 700 rams into his uncle before Goku could pay for his mistake. Raditz, still having energy left though, grabs his knocked out nephew for safekeeping while burrowing Goku under his foot for his kindness. He would make sure to train up his son instead into a real Saiyan one day. It was now too risky for Krillin to throw the destructive disc from afar. The situation couldn't get any worse, but being reminded of a technique they should all somewhat know by now, Krillin immediately yells out to Goku, pointing to the reflection of his shiny scalp. Goku, getting the memo, and with his last bit of ki, yells out on the ground, "Solar Flare!" immediately blinding Raditz as he drops Gohan on Goku's body. With all of his speed now, in slow motion like an action movie, Krillin would appear on top of Raditz with a roar of Destructo Disc, embedding the circular eraser at an awkward angle. Like a piece of paper, Raditz's body is cut into two diagonally as both fighters fall on the ground, one dead and the other unconscious. Even though he wasn't able to taunt the warriors this time, his scouter was still on. Far away, two other Saiyans could hear the slicing and gushing on their own scouters disturbingly, promoting a new interest on this planet Earth for the two if Raditz really got done in by some non-Saiyan warrior. Shifting perspective back to Goku, glad his son was knocked out from seeing such a brutal scene. It's not long till the rest of the Z Fighters and Bulma arrive on the battlefield, eventually lifting the two up to the lookout. Krillin muttering to himself multiple times on the endless loop on the way there, saying that was scary, but no one died today. Honestly, kinda spooking Bulma a little bit, cause he definitely had PTSD, but after getting situated from the presence of Kami and senzu beans being passed around, he was glad everyone was able to come out of this predicament alive, especially his two main students. But he sadly had to give the news that through his sensing, he could tell there was two other warriors approaching this planet, suspecting them to be allies of Goku's brother. Now knowing his own people a bit more and a good Zenkai boost boosting up to a 700, Goku was now excited for what was to come ahead, while Krillin was beginning to really worry about what kind of situation he just got himself into. A Saiyan invasion though wouldn't be the only situation the monk would have to worry about. With a more estranged relationship towards our heroes in canon and no Gohan kidnapped for him to change his heart, Piccolo's desire for revenge would twofold against both of Kami's goody students. Even if he had to prepare for some Saiyan invasion on his way to his goal, if he couldn't be trusted as an ally, then he would make sure Goku regretted sparing him and his brat by growing allies of his own. He just needed a plan to execute, and luckily he had a whole year to work on that. As the Namekian begins to fly off and find out more of him and Kami's history, particularly finding interest in the history of the previous Guardians of Earth, truly meditating to at least tap into a little bit of the memory both Namekian shared before. It's not long before this Garlic Jr. and his mysterious dead zone becomes a topic of interest for his own plan, as this is where I'll be putting a stop to the story for right now. Yes sir, going over the word count for the second time to a dog's annoyance. Probably gonna start being a theme at this point, but yeah, first Dragon Ball What If it has started, and it is even Goku centered like other people's stories. Well, at least until later. Anyways though, sorry a bit for the long wait. A man gotta spend like half his life now to math in this pre-calculus grind. As you can tell, I'm trying to slowly introduce my 4 main ongoing series for this channel for the first half of the year. So if you're wondering, Dark Sonic Part 3 will probably be up next, but honestly I'm probably going to go back to my second channel and make another Mario & Luigi review since it's been a bit over there. I'm also finally mostly done with getting the whole Patreon thing handled. I just gotta check how you do this junk on YouTube membership also. Anyways dog, it's probably gonna be a bit to the next upload, so as always, comment your thoughts and criticisms. If you don't got nothing to say, just type algorithm fuel like them other YouTubers be doing. And y'all prep yourselves especially for that Dark Sonic story. Things are definitely gonna go up in scale soon enough. Alright man, I'm out.